Hey, friends, we're back with more coverage of MXP Oakland. Jarvis, did you see that our preview card is a Phyrexian creature that may or may not be uh, a black aligned card?
Yeah, I saw that. I was just thinking about this. In Phyrexia, all will be one. I believe all of the creatures except like five were Phyrexians as well. So
All
really
right.
showing its dominance over this plane or whatever.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk more about March of the Machine later on in the broadcast, but for now, we've got Magic to bring you. We have Alexander Lim. He's been a favorite in the coverage area over the course of the weekend. 9-1 with Bring to Light. His opponent, Brandon B, with Temur Rhinos.
Huh.
How do you see
So
this matchup playing out?
um it's kind of close. I think I generally like the bring to light side of the matchup, but definitely there's a few things going on here. There's some interesting choices in Brandon's list. Two main deck season Pyromancer and two magmatic sinkhole.
Do you see those as being meaningful in this particular matchup?
I think the season Pyromancer is meaningful. I'm not sure about the magmatic sinkhole, really. I guess it's a clean answer to Omnath if that hits the battlefield, which is kind of nice. But besides that, I'm not too sure.
Key cards to keep an eye on for me are Teferi Time Raveler on the side of Alexander Lim. Of course, that
Hmm.
will shut off the Cascade ability that Brandon B's deck is built around. And then on the flip side, Force of Negation, which is a great answer to Teferi, and it can also stop Alex from resolving Bring to Light, Scape Shift, any of those devastating cards.
Yep. Kind of wonder if we're going to see the caster of Blood Moon die to their own Blood Moon again.
Yeah, that's been a common theme so far. That'll be a post board consideration as we do expect Brandon to bring in Blood Moons against Alex.
So I think really thinking about the matchup, all the games that Brandon wins will basically be quick rhinos plus enough disruption to keep the 4/4s attacking. And it has to be pretty quick, otherwise you run the risk of getting Teferi'd out of the game.
Yeah, most definitely. Here we see Brandon fetching on his main phase could be an opportunity for a Shardless Agent, which would, I think, put him in the driver's seat at this point. For anyone who's just tuning in, we are in round 11 of 13. This event is just under 400 players, and we're going to have a cut to top eight after 13 rounds. So I'm not ready to predict exactly what record you need to make top eight, but we could be in the realm where these players at the top of the standings with one more win are sort of punching their ticket in the top eight. So they really want to win this one and just, make it a no contest.
Oh, I think Alexander sniffs out a violent outburst here.
Yeah, so once again, we have the fetching on the main phase, which is not a bad thing to do, but also I'm not sure exactly why it happened in that particular way.
Maybe he wanted to see if there was a shadow of doubt. You joke. I saw a fetch one get shadow doubted in the European event.
No kidding. But it seems to be like that would be even more reason to not fetch on your main phase.
Yeah, I was thinking that actually, but who can say? So Alex was taking a few quick notes due to the revealed cards from Cascade, which I think just gives you a lot of information on exact deck construction.
Sure.
aggressively fetching that basic plains. Love to see it.
Yeah. So, what do you make of that? I guess he's gonna play a leyline binding. He's gonna use the planes for mana.
Hmm.
Do you
There's
think
also
that? Do you think that he's
oh,
worried about a main deck Blood Moon?
yeah, I think that's on his radar. Some versions of Temur Rhinos do play main deck Blood Moon, but if you analyze how Brandon fetched, I think it's pretty unlikely. Because the second fetch land got Steam Vents, and then the third fetch land got Mountain. If you have main deck Blood Moon, you would fetch Island and probably something else,
Well,
right?
Forest at least they did happen
Yeah,
to both be wooded foothills, so you can't get Island.
sure.
But point taken.
Ooh, Seasoned Pyromancer. That is one of the cards that I noted as being different about Brandon's version compared to the others. Scoring 2 lands.
Nicely discarding a redundant copy of Gemstone Cavern too. There you go. That's just genius deck building right there. It's like I want to play 2 copies of a legend, and I want to have the Seasoned Pyromancer to discard them when I draw both.
Prismatic Ending, trading for the other Rhino. So the big question is, does Brandon have another Cascade card? Because I think that's really the huge difference maker here.
Yeah, he really wants to rebuild, put Alex on a quick clock. He did have some nice card selection, including that Seasoned Pyromancer, but doesn't look like he has really that exciting of a hand. It's something like Fury, Fury, Fire Ice.
Yep, fetch land and forest.
So he's just firing off Fury as 5 mana, 3/3.
I mean, it does attack for 6 at least.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with him. I would make the same play. Oh no, he has decided against it. He is now going to cast Ice in Alex's upkeep to potentially slow the use of 4 or 5 mana spell like Omnath or Bring to Light, dig himself a little bit deeper. Once again, he did the main phase fetch move.
Hmm.
Maybe he saw Alex fetch the basic planes and sort of wants to keep um, the little inception of Blood Moon being a possibility.
Yeah, that's possible. Although I think, given Alex's position, it's kind of hard to play around the Blood Moon without that run having arrived that turn. But in any case, let's see. Are we going to see? Well, actually, now casting the Fury makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah, it works out pretty well actually. The
Mhm.
Fury, which I would have cast last turn to just kill nothing and have a creature, now gets to kill off the red and 6 for some value.
I guess sort of the worry about running out your Furies in the matchup is it's pretty easy for them to get Shriek Mauled back by, say, an opposing Solitude. So maybe you don't want to just necessarily run them out. Because by this point, remember, it's closed deckless. Brandon doesn't know that Alex is Bring to Light Scapeshift.
Yeah, he's just thinking, oh, another one of these Omnath trade binder people playing a bunch of 5 color cards. The only clue that he does have is Alex has not revealed Kahira the Orphan Guard as a companion,
Mhm.
which you often see. But yeah, it's a good reality check that these players don't know exactly what's going on.
So it looks like, what does Alex have in hand? I saw an expressive iteration, then the other few cards they were kind of hard to see. Chat says Alex has a Bring to Light in hand. That would be a good one here, I think.
So just one easy thing you could do is bring to light for Supreme Verdict. You could also go for
Mhm.
the Tybalt Cosmic Imposter, but you definitely want to get that Fury off the
Right.
battlefield. Keep in mind this Temur deck does have burn spells, so you should be careful when you're going down below like 6-5 life.
Definitely multiples of 2 matter because of Fire Ice. Um, People generally stopped playing Bone Crusher Giant, which was the other burn spell. You could also just see something as simple as Omnath here if he thinks that's the best route, but he went for Supreme Verdict instead.
Going for Supreme Verdict there makes me think that Alex has a strong follow up. So that's the type
Mhm.
of play you make when you're like, all right, I just need to prolong the game a little while. Um, Whereas if you had just, nothing remaining in your hand or a couple of lands, you might think that you have to get something a little more impactful.
Oh, what about cycling Fiery Islet?
Yeah, so Brandon passing with mana open, which could mean that he has nothing. It could mean that he has a counter spell. It could mean that he has violent outburst. He does have the
Mhm.
seasoned pyromancer in his graveyard, so at least he can choose to spend his mana making 2 tokens.
Here's the EI. It did not get counterspelled. Ooh, that's a nice one. I saw EI, Renin 6, and something else.
Leyline binding.
So, given that Brandon's hand was Force of Negation and Fury, would you have countered the first EI with Force of Negation?
Mm, oh, I would just be crying basically. Like that's exactly what you don't want to see when
Yeah,
you have a hand like that
right.
because you could counter the expressive iteration, but then it takes your full turn and you have no remaining counter spells, or you could let it resolve and just sort of die this death by 1,000 cuts. One factor for me is that I do want to spend my mana on the seasoned pyromancer, and
Right.
um, not for nothing, Alexander's life total is 9, so the 2 tokens are meaningful here. So I think I agree with the way Brandon played this, but I also agree with the way Alexander played it, and Alex is navigating around the force of negation pretty effectively.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough way to do it because I think that's the type of spell that is probably just good enough to justify Force of Negationing. But when you factor in the fact that spending 5 mana to make 2/1s to actually try to put a clock on your opponent matters a lot, then you probably shouldn't counter it in that scenario.
Well said. Okay, we have players asking the judge a question, maybe going for oracle text.
Yep, we're going to Scryfall. He's looking up Dead Gone. And yet, like we covered yesterday, this is actually a very new addition to the floor rules, saying that you can pull up your phone to look up something on either Gatherer or Scryfall.
Yeah, so I wonder, do you have to like is looking up a card's text the only thing you're allowed to do? Um,
Uh,
I'm wondering, like, can you go
right.
fishing, right? If you're playing playing booster draft, can you just be like, I'm going to search all the instants in the set and see what my opponent might have?
I don't think you're allowed to do that, but I also don't know for sure.
Ooh, man, he's looking classy right now. Looking up like face up. Oh, I think you have Dead Gone. I'm going to look it up on my phone, and then sure enough, Brandon has it.
Yeah, this is not the most effective play for Brandon because I think there's just a good chance that the Omnath will get recast this turn as well, right?
Yeah, I actually remember this exact same play happening yesterday where a Rhinos
Mhm,
player had to petty theft an Omnath. And, if you're going to win the following turn, that's all fine and good. But in a game like this that's slowed down
mhm,
and your opponent's just getting the full, card advantage from replaying Omnath multiple times, it's a
mhm.
tough way to do it.
I think Alex gained as effectively 3 life because the Omnath was uh being bounced in response to the draw, and then he cracked his fetch, so he should be at 12, I believe. Or maybe 10. I don't know. I don't know exactly what the life total should be. All right. What do you think the most exciting thing that could happen in this game is from this standpoint?
A meteor strikes the convention center.
Oh, well,
Second place, though, would be, I mean, Brandon needs to play another Cascade spell, and Alex is trying to either continue this value game with Omnath or just resolve Scape Shift. But that's going to be tough given Brandon playing cagily with the Force of Negation.
yep,
But I
agree
think
with
what's
you.
going to happen is Omnath is going to resolve, and then Brandon's going to try to use Fury to kill it next turn, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, this Omnath is what's the way of putting it? Omnath plus fetch lands almost acts like removing 2 Rhinos by itself.
Yeah. This game was funny because Brandon started out with the nice start of
Hmm.
violent outburst into crashing footfalls, and Alex was like, "All right, I'm just going to take my medicine and take 4 damage, and then remove both of them on an individual basis." But that was it. Brandon never found a follow up Cascade spell, even after
Hmm.
digging with the Seasoned Pyromancer. And so Alex has just had infinite time, and that clearly is favoring the player who's playing Omnaths and expressive iterations, and basically every card is a 2-for-1. That's pulling him further and further ahead on resources.
Ooh, Dryad of Elysian Grove. That if you're familiar to Modern, that tells a lot about your opponent's deck.
It's just a
Oh,
5-color deck, so he wants to fix his mana, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely right. It doesn't do anything else.
Well, it's a 2-4. Could block these elemental tokens.
2 for it. That's like Corsair Prefix.
It actually has many similarities to Corsair Prefix, but what we're actually glossing over is that Alex's deck has, I think, the full 4 copies of Valakut the Molten Pinnacle. Just by coincidence, hasn't drawn one in this game, but the Dryad of the Elysian Grove can be really deadly in tandem with Valakut.
Yeah, there are 4 Valkits, and actually, I hadn't noticed this before. He's playing 28 lands. That's an extremely high land count.
I think it makes a lot of sense because, first of all, he has a really demanding mana base with all the Valakuts and
Hmm.
mountains, while still wanting to cast the 4 colors worth of spells. And I've seen Alex win game after game on the back of just playing Dryad and playing a whole lot of lands in the first few turns of the game.
Right.
So when you have these play extra lands type of cards like Arboreal Grazer, Dryad of the Elysian Grove, whatever it might be,
Hmm.
it's just extra important to always have a large number of lands in your hand without having to work for it.
Yep. It doesn't look like he's actually missed a land drop this game, although it can be hard to tell. We're pretty deep into the game.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I'm pretty sure Alex started this game with a mulligan. So
Hmm.
already on a resource disadvantage, then 2 for 1ing against the first crashing footfalls, but just battling back and battling back and battling back off of these expressive iterations and omnaths.
Oh, Bring Light was the bait spell. He had the scape shift.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, um, yeah,
So,
if I'm sure if the Bring to Light had resolved, Alex would have searched for Tybalt, Cosmic
mhm,
Imposter. Brandon could have chosen to let Bring to Light resolve and counter whatever was searched for. That opens you up to the risk that Alex would go for a creature like Omnath or Elishnorn. But yeah, I mean, this was just Alex kind of having his number here, and it, really, it just got to this point because Brandon took too long to win the game. Not necessarily through fault of his own, but just through not drawing enough cascade spells to put on ample pressure.
by the way, something very nice that Alex is doing is he's counting the number of mountains he has slash in play slash in his graveyard and not sacrificing all of his lands willy nilly. He's being very deliberate about this before doing it. So
Right,
you
and
can't.
to your point, Jarvis, you don't have to overkill your opponent. You don't have
No.
to sacrifice everything and do 100 damage. If your opponent's at 12, then
Well, also here he's just getting 3 Valakits and 2 mountains, which is plenty of damage on that board state.
all right. So that's Alexander Lim taking the slow and steady approach for most of the game until suddenly he wasn't taking the slow and steady approach anymore and he was killing out of nowhere. That's basically what his deck does and what we've seen
Mhm.
successfully accomplished time after time on camera.
Well, so you said meteors falling on the convention center. Would you say that volcanoes erupted over Brandon?
Yeah, that was definitely the second most exciting thing that I could think of happening.
Who
Okay,
was it?
Jarvis, remind us what's the
Sorry,
most important card coming in off the sideboard here?
Blood Moon.
Blood Moon. So Blood Moon's going to stop any Valakut shenanigans. It has the potential to just outright mana screw Alexander Lim. And as we've seen, sometimes it's not actually Blood Moon resolving that does the damage, but just the threat of Blood Moon forcing these 4-color players to fetch out of sequence and do uncomfortable things with their mana.
Yep, definitely agree with you. Um, from Alex's side, we have 2 Chalice of the Void, 2 Engineered Explosives, 2 Bosejus, 2 Flusterstorm, 2 Hallowed Moonlight. You could conceivably make a case for Veil of Summer or Celestial Purge as well.
Yeah, wow. So he could bring in basically his whole sideboard minus. I don't think endurance makes much sense, but
Right.
he could like totally overhaul his deck if he chose to.
I don't know if you've ever seen this play, but it was pretty common in old 4C Orion. You have Chalice on 0, you cast Veil of Summer. If it resolves, then you play another Chalice for 0.
How do you feel about removal spells like Prismatic Ending and Leyline Binding from Alex's side?
I want like a very small number of them in. The thing is, they are also outs to Blood Moon, so you can't really cut too many of them, I think. I think I'm more inclined to cut something like Elishnorn, I think. Um, I guess it's kind of difficult to try to figure out what should you side out, like, period. There's not a lot of room.
Yeah, for sure. When you're starting from the position of all of your cards being so good, but I could see just making some cuts here and there.
Mhm.
Sometimes going from 4 down to 3 Ren and 6, or from 4 down to
Right.
3 Dryad of the Elysian Grove. Um, Alex is, I think, most often going to want to search for scape shift when he resolves bring to light. So
Mhm.
his other targets of Supreme Verdict, Valky, Elish Norn, you might not need all of those. Maybe you pick and choose which ones you think are going to be most important to have access to.
I think I'm inclined to take out Valky, probably.
Yeah, I kind of like Supreme Verdict, though notably that is
Yeah.
way harder to cast if you're worried about Blood Moon.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting you suggested the Dryad Trim. I think probably I wouldn't cut Dryads because if you cast it off of Force after Blood Moon, it works out perfectly for you.
Right, you were explaining this to me yesterday, the timestamps.
Mhm.
So in other words, whichever one enters the battlefield has entered the battlefield more recently will override the other between a Blood Moon and a Dryad of the Elysian Grove.
Yep. And I think basically from Alex's perspective, I'm pretty sure he knows that, so he'll probably try to sandbag the Dryad unless if he can't afford to, essentially.
Really interesting point in chat that Valky is a bring to light target under Blood Moon because you only need X equal, well, it would be, I guess, minimum of X equals 3 for bring to light
Mhm.
because you'd have blue, green, and red. But yeah, in a world where you can't get up to like Scapeshift or Omnath, you could hypothetically get Valky.
Something I hadn't considered that Cookie Kid 00 pointed out, uh, the person who actually qualified off playing this deck on MTGO, if you have Blood Moon and Dryad, your basics are still Utopia lands.
Uh, could you explain what that means?
So because Blood Moon won't affect the basic lands, like being reset to a different type, it still has the ability taps for any color. It's just kind of weird.
So it's not related to timestamps. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, more than
Got it.
that one isn't, but I think for your non-basics, it is timestamps.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. Got it. Got it. Got it.
Yeah,
So your basic forest can tap for any color. Okay.
right. Ooh, Fire Ice. Fire Ice is actually one of my lifetime favorite cards.
Yeah, for sure. And this is the dream opening for Temur
Mhm.
Rhinos. Where you're on the play, you ice your opponent's second land, and now you're ready to cascade before they've played anything to the board.
Right. Creativity used to play a lot of fire races, and they slowly cut down on them because it would just create situations where your opponent would leave up at like exactly 2 blue. Then you would ice one of their blue sources, and they'd be like, "Well, now I'm kind of in a bad spot," you know?
Sure. Yeah. Remember when the tech against counter spells used to be cards like Mana Short or Giga Drowse
Yeah.
to tap your opponent
Yep.
out? Now we have Veil of Summer. It's so much easier. We used to have to work to get through a counter spell the old days. To Fairy Time Raveler.
Ooh, this is looking pretty good for Brandon so far.
Yeah, so he went for a main phase Violent Outburst into Crashing Footfalls. Again, interesting timing there. You, I think, don't want to let your opponent have access to two untapped blue sources,
Mhm.
but I could see like trying to pass the turn and respond to a fetch land or doing it in the upkeep or something like that. Because Alex could have had a Flusterstorm there, but Brandon just wanted
What
to minimize the number of cards that got him.
what about EE for 0? And then look at this Flusterstorm on the force of negation. To be fair, I think a reason to main phase the outburst is to play around Flusterstorm, right? Or I guess what fetch land was it?
Rainforest. So
Oh, okay. Huh. So I guess Alex had the Fluster the entire time, or either drew it.
yeah, it makes sense to me if you have the engineered
Mhm.
explosives. to wait, especially if Alex predicted the exact turn of events of, oh, Brandon is not worried about engineered explosives because he has force of negation, and I can sort of 3 for 2 him here with the fluster and the engineered explosives. It's a great exchange for Alex, really making the most out of his cards. And oh man, Brandon took
Uh,
his shot. It did not work out, and now he is behind against a Fairy Time Raveler in the worst possible way.
Look at this. Alex also has two basics naturally, although no planes, which I think is a key one as well. Alex looking really good in these games so far. That's all I can say. So is that a black triome? That's Savai triome, right?
You got me. I think one is Ketria, and yeah,
Yeah.
it could be Ketria and Savai.
So good thing about that is if Alex has prismatic ending, yes. So it must be Savai triome, because then it could take out the Fury for all 5 colors.
So here's an instant speed, uncounterable.
Ooh, we're
And
getting
this is
scrappy.
pretty much the one action that you are allowed to take against a Teferi Time Raveler, which is to channel a land.
Ooh, Elshorn stayed in the deck. I did not predict that,
And
but it
it's just a
just
perfect card here. It stops Fury. It's
yep.
unkillable. So
Hmm.
Alex has just, man, he's been so impressive all weekend. Just kind of has everybody's number, like the right card in the right situation over and over again.
Clearly, I should be playing Bring to Light Scapeshift for me. My next modern tournament.
Maybe he's making it look good.
Sure.
And yeah, like we said, we're cruising towards the top 8. Not going to guarantee that the 10th win is going to be good in everybody's case, but I think Alex is at this point. I would say I will be surprised to not see him in our top 8,
I agree.
assuming he wins this game and advances to 10-1.
Hmm. So I think we're pulling up the text of Elshorn because I believe that one is in Japanese.
Yeah, and I can tell you that you're not going to be happy, Brandon, when you read this card.
Yeah. I think he was pretty sure what he did, but there's no harm in just, making sure. So any Omnaths? That is well, it's a Triome. I'm not going to guess which one because I can't.
That's the proving ground. Kind of looks like a boxing ring from here.
Oh yeah, I think it is the Proving Ground.
Yeah, so Alex doesn't really need to play any more cards to win from here. That the
Mhm.
combination of Elish Norn and Teferi lock out a huge swath of Brandon's cards. But as you alluded to, like if he can start triggering abilities twice, like that of an Omnath or of a Valakut, then it is going to be this is going to end very quickly.
I don't think I've actually seen anyone trigger the Valakut with Elshorn happening, so that will be a bucket list item for this tournament.
Sure.
Blood Moon. This is not the most exciting Blood Moon by this point. Are we floating in response? Because we're floating.
Yeah, this is like Alex could ignore it. He could bounce it with Fairy if he wants to. He probably has a million instants to deal with it if he wants.
It's like a Leyline Binding for 2 mana because he floated, and he still has 3 basic lands out.
With Elish Norn, a Leyline Binding can take out both Rhinos. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Then you bounce it with Teferi and take out 2 more permanents. All
Jeez.
right, Alexander Lim, 10-1. Oh, he gives a cheer. We've seen him be pretty, stoic business
Mhm.
mode, but that I think he's finally cutting loose and thinking, all right, I've put myself in such a good position that they're going to have a hard time keeping me out of top 8 at this point.
Yeah, definitely a great run so far. And again, I would also be surprised not to see him in top 8 by this point.